Water has become the new battleground in geopolitics, with experts warning that future wars will be fought over water, not oil. This statement rings especially true in the case of India and China, where the struggle for control over transboundary rivers is intensifying. As China accelerates its dam-building projects on rivers like the Yarlung Tsangpo, which becomes the Brahmaputra in India, concerns over water security, ecological damage, and border disputes are growing. India, too, has proposed countermeasures with its own hydroelectric projects, but the challenges of balancing development with diplomacy remain immense. In the evolving geopolitics of water, both nations are navigating a complex mix of cooperation and confrontation, highlighting the critical role water resources will play in shaping future power dynamics. The 2,880-kilometer-long Brahmaputra originates in Tibet and is known as the Yarlung Tsangpo in China. It flows eastwards through southern Tibet for a distance of 16,025 kilometers, and at its easternmost point, it swings around to make a spectacular U-turn at the Shuamatan Point, also called Great Bend, before it enters India's easternmost state, Arunachal Pradesh. Here it is known as the Xiang River. After gathering the waters of several rivers, it announces itself as the Brahmaputra in the state of Assam. The river snakes lazily through Assam to then enter Bangladesh, where it is known as the Jamuna. In Bangladesh, it is joined by the Ganga and Meghna, and together these rivers form the world's largest delta before emptying their waters into the Bay of Bengal. On December 25, 2024, China gave the green light to build the world's largest hydropower dam. This massive project is planned across the lower stretches of the Yarlung Tsangpo River. The dam is set to be constructed at the Great Bend in Maydog County, Tibet, where the river takes a dramatic U-turn. With a staggering price tag of $137 billion, this hydropower project is expected to generate an incredible 300 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity each year, about 3 times more than China's current record holder, the Three Gorges Dam. Although this ambitious plan has been in the pipeline for years and was officially included in China's 14th five-year plan back in 2020, it's already stirring concerns. Experts and rights groups worry about the displacement of local communities and the potential environmental damage it could cause, especially for downstream countries like India and Bangladesh. The move might undo the gains China and India have achieved in strengthening their ties, particularly in the wake of the June 2020 hostilities in the Galwan Valley, the first significant military confrontation between the two nations in decades. Pertinently, only a few months ago, in October 2024, both countries decided to withdraw their soldiers, and last month, senior officials from both sides finally had formal discussions for the first time in 5 years. India's Ministry of External Affairs said that India has asked China to make sure its activities upstream, like building the dam, don't negatively affect the countries downstream, especially India and Bangladesh. On the other hand, Chinese officials have reassured that their hydropower projects in Tibet would not cause major environmental problems or affect water supply downstream. They've also pointed out that the Yarlung Tsangpo Dam is in line with their carbon neutrality goals for 2060. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh has said that India is staying alert to China's plans for the megadam. India is worried about the megadam for several reasons. One major concern is that China could control the flow of water to India. There's also the threat of environmental damage and the risk of floods, especially since the area is in an earthquake-prone part of the Himalayas. For example, the magnitude of a 7.1 earthquake devastated Tibet a couple of weeks ago. Geostrategist Brahma Chalani wrote that the dam could make the long-standing territorial and border issues between India and China even worse, especially since China took control of Tibet in 1951. He also pointed out that China, which already has many dams, is increasingly focusing on rivers that flow into other countries. In response, India has proposed its hydroelectric dam on the Xiang River, with a potential capacity of 11,000 megawatts. This is seen as a counter to China's dams upstream, but it's facing protest from people in Arunachal Pradesh and Assam. Even Bhutan's dams are raising concerns for India and Bangladesh. Pertinently, India, China, Bhutan, and Bangladesh have not signed the UN Convention on Non-Navigable Uses of Watercourses. India and China did sign a Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) in 2013 to cooperate on rivers that cross borders, but no action has been taken under it. Another MOU on the Brahmaputra River, which expired in 2023, is supposed to be renewed every 5 years, but that process is still ongoing. Former Indian ambassador to China, Ashok Kanta, told that India needs to raise its concerns with China much more strongly, instead of just having quiet talks. Pertinently, Asia is home to 60% of the world's population, about 4.4 billion people in 2016, and has the highest growth rate globally. During the 20th century, its population nearly quadrupled. Despite this massive growth, Asia's water resources have remained the same. For example, the two most populated countries, China and India, make up 20% and 17% of the world's population, but have only 7% and 4% of the world's water resources, respectively. Back in 1998, China's then Deputy Prime Minister Wen Jiabao warned that water shortages posed a serious threat to the survival of the Chinese nation. Barry Naughton, a prominent expert on the Chinese economy, also highlighted that China faces massive challenges in areas where population density strains the limits of water and land resources. Ensuring access, supply, and control over water has become a critical goal for China, and this explains its focus on building dams and large-scale water diversion projects. There are several reasons for this drive. First, China's growing population, rapid economic development, and rising living standards have significantly increased water demand. Yet the country's per capita water supply is only 28% of the world average, falling far below sustainable levels. Second, China has historically been a water-scarce country with a highly uneven distribution of its water resources. Most of the water, about 80%, is in the south, while the north, which is home to half the population and much of the agricultural and economic activity, has only 20%. Agriculture alone consumes 70% of the country's water, and the coal industry takes another 20%, both concentrated in the already stressed northern regions. For instance, people in the south enjoy access to 25,000 cubic meters of fresh water per person annually, while those in the north, including major cities like Beijing and Tianjin, have access to less than 500 cubic meters. Unsurprisingly, water scarcity in the north is a huge concern for the Chinese government. In 2011, a vice minister for water resources described the situation as increasingly grim. China also faces serious water quality issues. Nearly 60% of its groundwater is polluted, and reports indicate that less than half of the country's water can be treated to make it drinkable. Worse, about a quarter of surface water is so contaminated that it isn't even suitable for industrial use. Third, hydropower is a key part of China's plan to expand renewable energy under its 12th Five-Year Plan, FYP. Hydropower already provides 6% of its energy, and China aims to triple its hydropower capacity to 300 gigawatt. To achieve this, China has been intensively damming transboundary rivers. China's water crisis is also seen as a potential bottleneck for its economic growth. To address this, the government has taken two major steps. Domestically, it has introduced policies like the 3 Red Lines, which aim to improve water use efficiency and control demand. On a larger scale, it has undertaken massive projects like the South-North Water Transfer Project, SNWTP. This project aims to transfer 45 billion cubic meters of water annually from the water-rich south to the water-scarce north, particularly to the Beijing-Tianjin region. The project is expected to cost over $62 billion and has already displaced thousands of people. The western line of the SNWTP is particularly controversial because it involves diverting water from the Great Bend of the Yarlung River, which flows into India's Assam Plains. This would redirect about 200 billion cubic meters of water to the Yellow River. However, China's exact plans for this part of the project remain unclear, as different sources provide conflicting information. China's control over the Brahmaputra River is a challenge for India. China enjoys a unique position as the only country in the region that is entirely upstream of several major rivers, giving it significant control over water flows to downstream nations. It shares 42 transboundary watercourses with its neighbors, making its water policies central to Asia's water security. For India, the Brahmaputra River is of particular concern. While India is an upstream country for Pakistan and Bangladesh, it is downstream from China, creating a complex dynamic over water rights. When it comes to sharing river waters, upstream countries like China often claim full sovereignty, meaning they believe they have the right to use river waters as they see fit, without considering downstream nations. This approach, known as the Harman Doctrine, contrasts with the downstream nation's argument for territorial integrity, which insists upstream actions shouldn't harm the flow of water downstream. China's position as an entirely upstream nation and its control over the Tibetan Plateau, home to some of Asia's most significant rivers, including the Brahmaputra, makes it a hydro-hegemon in the region. Tibet, often called the roof of the world, holds the largest freshwater reserves outside the polar regions. This strategic control allows China to dominate the flow of rivers like the Brahmaputra, Ganga, and Mekong, among others. China has heavily invested in dam building projects on these rivers, including the Brahmaputra. Notable among these is the Zhangmu Dam, completed in 2010, with additional dams under construction at Dagu, Jaicha, and Jeishu. Work has also begun on the Zam hydropower station, set to be the largest dam on the river. However, China's lack of transparency about these projects has created suspicion and mistrust in India, particularly in its northeastern states. China has consistently pursued a policy of absolute sovereignty over shared water resources. It has built more dams than any other country, but hasn't entered into water-sharing treaties with any of its neighbors, including India. For example, on the Mekong River, China has constructed 8 dams with plans for more, often without consulting downstream countries like Myanmar and Thailand. Even when invited to join multilateral frameworks like the Mekong River Commission, China has declined. Scientific evidence reveals the harmful impact of Chinese dams on the Mekong River. New research highlights the severe consequences of Chinese dam projects on downstream water resources, which are vital for the livelihoods of millions of people. China has also refused to ratify international agreements like the 1997 UN Convention on the Law of the Non-Navigational Uses of International Watercourses, which promotes cooperation over shared water resources. Similarly, it hasn't accepted the Helsinki Rules, which advocate for equitable and reasonable use of water and an obligation to not harm. This refusal highlights China's preference for unilateral decision-making, prioritizing its interests over collaborative solutions. China's dam-building activities on the Brahmaputra have raised major concerns in India. While China claims these are run-of-the-river projects, meaning they don't store water but return it to the river after generating electricity, India remains wary. There are fears that China could manipulate water flows during lean seasons or release excess water during the monsoon, causing floods in India's northeast. Additionally, these dams could reduce the silt flow, which is vital for maintaining the fertility of the Brahmaputra's floodplains. The seismic sensitivity of the region adds another layer of risk. Many of China's dams are located in tectonically active zones, increasing the likelihood of catastrophic failures during earthquakes. China's refusal to sign a water-sharing agreement further complicates matters. While there have been memorandums of understanding for sharing hydrological data, such as during the flood season, China has withheld this data in the past, such as during the Doklam standoff in 2017. This demonstrated how China could use water as a political tool to pressure downstream neighbors. India has tried to counterbalance China's activities by planning its hydropower projects in Arunachal Pradesh. However, most of these projects are stalled due to environmental clearances and funding issues. The only significant project under construction is the Lower Subansiri hydroelectric project, but even this faces delays. Experts note that despite China controlling a larger share of the Brahmaputra's basin, most of the river's flow originates within India due to contributions from tributaries like the Dibang, Loit, and Subansiri. However, this doesn't eliminate the risks posed by China's upstream activities, including intentional flooding or pollution. The path forward. For India to secure its water future, a long-term understanding with China is essential. This would require sustained dialogue and efforts to establish a water-sharing treaty that serves the interests of both nations. India's hydro-diplomacy faces the significant challenge of engaging China in meaningful negotiations. But this step is crucial to ensuring water security in the Brahmaputra basin. The lack of a strong multilateral agreement for sharing the waters of the Brahmaputra River, along with the absence of innovative strategies, could have serious consequences for people living in India's northeastern region, especially in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. Since the Brahmaputra is tied to unresolved border disputes between India and China, having a water-sharing agreement is crucial. Such an agreement could not only reduce the insecurity faced by the people in the region, but also help improve relations with China and Bangladesh. Although challenges lie ahead, they also present opportunities to find new solutions. India should seize these opportunities and leverage its position to bring China to the negotiating table. To cooperate on managing the river basin effectively, riparian states might need to give up some control and accept certain compromises. India must explore ways to collaborate with China to enhance the security and management of the Brahmaputra. At the 2018 Shangri-La Dialogue, Prime Minister Modi emphasized the idea of building an Asia of cooperation rather than rivalry to shape the future. However, India needs to establish clear norms for managing the Brahmaputra to counter China's increasing unilateral actions upstream, which can have downstream impacts both within India and beyond its borders. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel, Typographic Man. We'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content. See you in the next video.